travel, meaning that we connect travelers use our platform to connect with local experts who are located in the destination. And so Craig and I have worked really hard to create a more sustainable, ethical kind of multi-day travel platform. And so that's what Elsewhere is. It's a super easy to use service, and we're actually pre-launch. So we're new to this community. We're super proud to be a part of this community. And Craig, I'll let you talk about our B-Corp story.
Absolutely. Our B Corp story is very much in its infancy. In fact, we're a B Corp pending. So we're excited to be joining the fully fledged B corporations that are here with us right now as well. But our B Corp story really starts as kind of as an inspiration. Both Alexis and myself knew that we wanted to create a company. We knew that there was a structure and a business in place that we wanted to follow. Our own personal ideals and ethics really aligned with B Corporation. And so when we set out to create Elsewhere, we saw that B Corporation actually had the fundamentals and the practices in place that we could follow suit in order to create Elsewhere. So it's an interesting story bringing us from getting to launch and then creating a business around B Corporation structure. And then now as we move through and get to launch and then move into the operations, we're going to see how we evolve with the help of B Corp at our back. And as well with the legacy that you guys are going to hear about today on the call with individuals such as Tom and Adrianne and Jared and Erin, who have kind of led the way and pushed B Corp tourism to where it is now. So we're very thankful and grateful to be here standing up with these guys as well. And without further ado, I'll pass this on to Tom.
Thank you so much, Craig, and it's great to be with everyone today. I think what's really fascinating is everyone has got a different story about B Corp to tell, and certainly mine is different from the others in that my business, Animarem, which is a transformation design consultancy, working with leaders to help them envision and realize a brighter future, actually also represents the B Corp movement in the Southern African region. So it is in its infancy on the continent, but it's growing rapidly. And of course, with a passion for travel and having had a CEO-ship in a leading ecotourism business in Africa, I was very interested and keen to become a regional representative for bee tourism, because I believe it's so important that we grow around, a nexus of aligned support and thinkers and leaders, and really sort of create a lighthouse for people to gravitate towards by broadcasting our beliefs and actually walking the talk. I think so much of what's happening in the world is that businesses are stating purposeful intent, but they're not realizing it. And B Corp is the most credible way that I know, having done extensive research, to really demonstrate that you're a business that commits to, in the long term, with sustainability and the idea of regeneration in mind. So it's an absolute pleasure to be with you. We've got some great sort of transcontinental conversation to have. So I'm looking forward to the time with everyone. And I'm going to hand over to Adrianne, I think.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, everyone, for being here. It's so awesome to share this with peers and people that we looked up to greatly as well. So yeah, I'm Adrianne Chandra-Huff, and I'm one of the co-founders of Bodhi Surf and Yoga here in Bahia Ballena, Costa Rica. We've been around as a company for 11 years, and I would say that like CSR was sort of built into the company's foundation. It wasn't necessarily so much as an afterthought. It was from the very beginning, how can we utilize this business to do benefit for, I think originally our community and workers, thinking very small. And then as we grew, the world as a whole in the different verticals that we have some kind of stake. So whether that's surfing, marine tourism, marine conservation, yoga, travel, tourism in general. So for us, we certified as a B Corp company in 2016 for the first time. We recently recertified because you have to do it every 3 years. And I think, becoming a B Corp has been one of the single most pinnacle decisions for our company, in that it has put us into contact with, or in the circle with, so many companies, not just in our industry, but others that are, authentically leading and finding ways, whether that's working together with their competitors or, going cross industry to find solutions for the problems that we all see. Tourism is a huge industry. It's massive in scale and in scope, and there isn't necessarily a whole lot of oversight about who is green and who is not, and who is doing well and who's not, who's just saying they are, you know. So I think that this movement in particular with the B Corp and tourism is a really great meeting point and a way to not just educate consumers about what to look for when they are, you know, traveling and dollar voting, but also to for businesses to understand how imperative it is to get on board. So just really honored to be here and excited for this convo.
Nice. Thank you, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I'll tell you a little brief story about how I learned about B Corps in general. I was on an airplane between San Francisco and Los Angeles back in like 2000, I think it was 13, and was looking to do the crossword puzzle. So open up the magazine, and I remember Mindy Kaling was on the cover, and there was an article in there about B Corps, and it was instant. It was just in a moment. I'm just like, this is it. This is the only way, I think, to have a business by really defining our why. And so at that time, we were kind of in just the initial thoughts of starting a travel insurance company. And we were thinking, okay, from day one, we're going to be a B Corp. What we learned shortly afterwards was that there is a process, which is wonderful because it's more of a framework. It is a process. It is a journey in itself. So we were a pending B Corp for a year. We started in 2015, so it's about a year and a half. We were pending B Corp in early 2017. We finished our assessment. And you know, we're really kind of ancillary in the travel industry. I feel we're a support, but it's truly about us as founders and as a company, as individuals in the company who really believe in expressing why we're in business and how we can collectively, not competitively, but collectively and with cooperation and collaboration, really impact how we travel and how we impact as individuals the ecosystems and economies and communities that we travel to. So you know, something that everyone should know that in this group there's all different representatives of actual B Corps, pending B Corps, B Corp supporters and advocates, and all of us are also actively engaged with the Transformational Travel Council. So there's a lot of wisdom in this group, and I feel honored and very grateful to be here with you. So I think you know, to keep it generally loose, but have we can kind of popcorn style the conversation. Jared, can you tell us a little bit about, like, go into a little more depth about the B Tourism Working Group and how it came, not only how it came about, but what we're actually actively trying to do right now?
Absolutely. And if I touch a little bit on the B Corp as well in connection with that and why we came together. So where some confusion sometimes occurs on B Corp is that it's a certification, right? It certifies that we do business a certain way, but it's a lot more than that. And that, you know, you have certifications like fair trade that might apply to coffee, or organic that might apply to milk, but those are very product level specific and don't span the entire organization, the whole company. And that's where B Corp is interesting and different, is that it doesn't allow you to say, I'm doing one thing well, and I'm not going to show you all the other stuff, but I'm just going to celebrate that one thing I do really well, because that is essentially greenwashing and purpose washing. So it's a really great way to ensure that a company is credibly doing what they say all throughout, across all their stakeholders, which would include their workers and their community and the environment and their customers and their supply chain and the actual governance of the business, so that, you know, on how the shareholders interact with that business. And that's really important and has been a missing piece, I think, just in our world. Without it, we didn't have that to really help ensure honesty and integrity behind the statements of who's doing good and who isn't. Beyond that, in order to get that certification, because you have to take this assessment that measures how we perform, it becomes a benchmarking tool. So when you become a B Corp, it's not like you're like, cool, I got in the club, now I can like, just chill for a bit. No, you get to start benchmarking against not just industry competitors or collaborators, but against the whole world. I mean, there's over 70 countries that are part of this in 150 industries. And that's a big deal because I can look and say, hey, I know Patagonia does really well when it comes to the environment. Well, how do I fare compare to them? Where can I learn from them to improve what I'm doing as a business? And so businesses are always looking for what are the best practices? How do I engage my employees better than my competitor? How do I, lower turnover? How do I have a more thriving business? Well, it's like the secret sauce. It's like, well, if you kind of follow these best practices, you're going to have a more valuable business and you're not going to be screwing over the world in the process. So if you're like, I want to do right by the planet and people, and I want to thrive, this is really the best way to do it. And you get that credibility badge that goes with it, because in today's world where you talk about trust, that is very hard to come by. No one trusts anyone, governments, businesses, you name it. So B Corp really is a phenomenal community to be a part of outside of just certification. And so where that ties into B tourism is all those wonderful things I just said about B Corp is we want to bring that into the travel industry, travel and tourism. And we have about 65 or so B Corps that are part of the B Tourism group. We have another roughly 60 or so non-B Corps who are values aligned that are part of this collective. So as Erin said earlier, we have decided that we don't look at each other as competitors, we're collaborators, and we want to work together to share these best practices and to take steps and actions collectively together. So a way we share best practices, we have monthly meetings. Last month, we talked about transformational travel. Next month, we're talking about regenerative travel. And each month, there's a new exciting topic that we can all learn from, even if you're already doing them. Like I know what both transformational travel is and regenerative travel, but as I attend those sessions, I learn so much more and realize it's not just something that affects my business, it affects me individually as a person. And that's another unique element of this movement is by being a B Corp, you're able to integrate and align your personal values with what you do every day at work. And honestly, that's the best thing in the world. I mean, that to be able to do that, that is probably the number one issue when it comes to unhappiness and dissatisfaction is feeling like you're living two different lives. And you've got this cognitive dissonance between what you do daily and what you do when you're at home. This allows you to be the same person all throughout. So the goal of B Tourism is to bring that into the travel and tourism space, to radically collaborate with other partners out there. We don't want to be anything that already exists. We don't want to take anything away from any group that's doing well. So we search for good partnerships. And one of those great partnerships is the Transformational Travel Council. So B Tourism is a sole coalition partner to the TTC. And it's a partner there because what the TTC does really well is they help us understand why we travel in the first place. And they make us think about how we're going to travel. So they focus on those elements more than the what and the where of travel. Because reality is it doesn't matter where you go if you don't go there with the right mindset. And so it just changes our whole concept of what is the purpose of travel in the first place? How can we go about it so that it is most fulfilling for us individually and we're not harming others in the process? A great statistic that was shared, I think, in our call last month was that 50% of the enjoyment of travel is before you leave and even travel. 15% is while you're traveling, and 30%, my math was maybe 35% was is after, when you're reflecting on the trip that you had taken. And when you really consider that, it changes how, as a travel designer, you might design that trip. It changes as a traveler yourself. How should I approach that trip? Should I really ignore it all up until the last second because I'm busy at work? And then I'm just going to go and enjoy myself and realize I just lost half of the enjoyment of this expensive, wonderful trip that maybe I don't get to take again. I'm going somewhere like Africa and I don't get to go there all the time. So the goal of B Tourism is, we want to elevate these best practices within our community, within our industry. We want to collectively act on some of the largest issues that can't be solved by any individual person or company. And we have opportunities to do that. And eventually we want to have this great travel platform that makes it really easy for travelers to go to And there are some out there, but we want to build it out more so that travelers can stop not knowing where they can go responsibly. It needs to be as really easy, the way Amazon makes it easy to buy any product that you want. We need to have online mechanisms for people to travel just as easily and know they're not harming anyone in the process. And even better than the harm, how can they generate positive impact? And maybe they can sort by values and say, I really care about land conservation and wildlife conservation. And they know just from who they choose to travel with that that's a company that specializes in those areas. So I could go on for a while. I don't want to monopolize the time. I get very excited about this. I feel very good about our ability to rebuild post this pandemic and the crises that we're facing with B-Tourism, the Transformational Travel Council, and our other partners kind of guiding that direction. So thank you, Erin.
Awesome. There's so much wisdom all the time. Thank you, Jared. Anyone want to add to that?
I wanted to maybe add and play ringmaster a little bit. I actually want to reference the fact that it is not just a certification, but the certification itself is incredibly rigorous. And one of the questions I get when businesses are reaching out to find out more about the B Corp movement, B tourism, and so on, is, you know, why would we go through all of this effort? And if I apply that lens to where the travel industry and the tourism industry is now, you know, we've already got a lot of things to worry about, right? You know, business continuity is an issue. When things are going to open up is an issue. And I actually wanted to point a question maybe in the direction of Craig and Alexis, because, you know, they're in the pre-launch phase of their business. They have so much work to do right now, just launching their business successfully. And yet they've also committed to become a pending B Corp, to put all that work in. So, you know, maybe the question I want to ask them is, why the effort? Why the commitment? Why is it so important? And what could that mean for other businesses who are considering it, but also faced with so many challenges at the moment?
Alexis, jump in whenever, because I know we got a lot to say on the topic. Tom, thanks for shooting this over to us, because I think it starts first with who Alexis and myself are, and kind of how we identify with B Corporation and the ethics and the structure that it brings to a lot of companies. It was something that we always kind of just had in mind, that we wanted to move in that right direction. But yeah, taking the leap is one thing. We heard the rumors. We knew the BIA assessment was going to be intense and rigorous, and we even sought outside help too, because we knew that starting a company that we wanted to get it right, as everyone does, but we also wanted to make sure that it was just in the right direction. So we kind of took every question step by step, and we went back and we made sure that we were entering it not correctly, but truthfully and honestly and genuinely, which is what the BIA is so good at too. It really brings out what is actually happening. And Jared, you touched on that a little bit. B Corporation being probably one of the only certifications that gives validation, delivers trust to the people who are seeing that certification stamp on people. And something that Alexis and I went through too, which was very interesting when we did the BIA. We did have in mind sustainability and responsible travel. There are parts in the BIA that bring up your environmental impact, your impact on the local culture. And we found it super interesting that as we started to build our company, we also started to see some changes thanks to the BIA and the rigorous process that it takes to go through it. And we ended up changing some of the ways that we even saw our own business, and we even perceived the way that we were going to operate. A lot of it had to do with the culture and the heritage and the engagements that we had with people. We personally always felt that the largest impact we might have would be on maybe the wildlife, on the environment, because tourism leaves such a scar on the environment if not done responsibly or correctly. But we ended up finding out that it has a lot to do with culture, people, and engagement. And we're very happy that we found that out through the BIA. And so if anyone's starting a company, what we'd recommend is really taking your time and be flexible, be prepared to make a change, be prepared to just be flexible when you start the process, and be excited about it too, because you need a lot of energy to get through the BIA, especially as an early company. And maybe as well, Adrianne, you've been in the B Corp industry for some time now, and you guys have been certified for some time. Have you gone through the certification process? Is that something that maybe you've done it once before, and we know that the BIA changes a lot, so maybe you've seen some changes throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And as a movement itself, I would say one thing that I think I very much appreciate about it is that just as you as a company, if you're going to become a B Corp, you're probably not going to, like Jared alluded to earlier, get it and be like, okay, I did it. Now I can chill, you know, like I feel like some certifications are like that. You just kind of like scramble to get it done. And then you're like, oh, now I have it. And that's good. The B Corporation movement as a whole, never mind the certification process, is always looking to improve itself every passing year. They do the inclusive economy challenges, which are annual, sort of making up for the fact that a lot can change and a lot can happen in 3 years. And I think as a busy company, if you are not diligently working annually to improve not just your score, but your impact, right? Your positive impact, you can actually fall behind. So this has been a tool that we have used, which has been really, really helpful. And then another huge development is that the SDGs are starting to be incorporated, and Jared can probably speak a little bit more to that. I think it's a really amazing, sort of very useful sort of a partnership, right, to see, because I think that's the thing about the B Corp movement. It's looking at the different systems that exist and trying to sort of align itself with larger organizations such as the UN, you know, to actually take, you know, utilize seeing what the problems are and the larger movements in each to sort of rectify those, and then aligning it and putting it into a framework that can be utilized by a company. So that has definitely been, I'm not going to say it gets easier necessarily. I think after you do the initial certification and you realize, wow, this is really extensive, but it also kind of empowers you because you're like, I really understand now how good this is and how complete and how holistic it is. And therefore I'm going to not just go out and do better, but I'm going to be a champion and try to get as many people on board as possible. It's one of those certifications that I think a lot of people give up on because it's hard or because they get really busy, you know. So if for any, you know, prospective B Corp, I think that taking it slow is a good call. There's also a lot of, like, I think even consultancies or student groups now that are helping companies. This is such an important movement. I think everyone in this space understands, and we're probably like, we could talk about it literally for the whole 24-hour session. We won't do that, but you know, if you were to catch us individually, we would also have a lot to say about how valuable it is and it has been to each of our respective companies for all of these reasons.
I think that framework that we're all kind of that, like the evolution, like the B Corp movement, and similar to TTC is this evolution. You know, we're in it and we're constantly evolving, and you know, this it leads by example. Like even the impact assessment changing and evolving in itself leads by example. It's allowing us to continuously be engaged. Like Craig, like you were saying, best practices, always evolving those best practices. There's this saying that I kind of like, that if you know everything, then there's nothing to learn. There's always something to learn. Like nobody knows everything. And the impact assessment and the engagement in the B Corp community is constantly learning, and that's part of our accountability. We're always going to have this opportunity to learn, to grow, along with the assessment and along with all of our partners and all of us together, right? And that's what drives engagement. Engagement is like this key word. Excuse me, I forgot to turn off my ringer. Engagement is always a key word in today's business environment. This drives actual genuine engagement, and so does the Transformational Travel Council. These two organizations and two movements that I feel have a lot in alignment. What B Corp does is just provide us the framework to continuously grow. And the more we get to know each other, the more I only want to do business with B Corps. It's like continuously. I'm drinking B Corp coffee right now, you know, and it's yeah, it's just always driving us to engage with each other and to get better and to learn from each other.
It's a mafia. You're in.
The friendly mafia.
But I think what's awesome about it as well, and you mentioned that link between the Transformational Travel Council's work and B Corp, is it's so seamless actually. So I'm an ambassador as well for the Transformational Travel Council. I've done the travel designer course, which is super rigorous. And as Jared said earlier, it really sort of coaches you into different ways of thinking about the, first of all, the extent of the journey, the before, during, and after, and actually what you're trying to intentionally do. If you reverse that into what does an operator actually then have to do to create the platform for that transformation and measure and continue to evolve against it, it's like the two pieces coming together in the moment of transformation, in impact, in sustainability, in regeneration. I just don't think there's two kind of better aligned movements, and it's starting to feel, yeah, very much like we're actually all part of one big movement, but we might have, different talents and skills and expertise to lend different components of that big movement, which for me is super powerful. And, the fact that travel in itself is so immersive, whereas other businesses aren't necessarily as immersive. I think we've got one of the biggest opportunities, also as an industry that employs 1 in 10 people in the world, to really genuinely shift the needle in terms of how people see the role of business in society. Because, and I'm a massive proponent of the idea, you can't change someone from behind a boardroom table. But where I am right now, I'm in an eco lodge in the wilderness. Guaranteed, if you take someone here and you kind of create this experience where they can really just return to their true nature, that's how you change them, and they go back and then they change the world in turn. So yeah, I think we've got an enormous opportunity, and there's so many great examples. Travis and Adrian and down in Costa Rica are just, yeah, we have shining lights who are doing such great work, and I'm inspired that they keep going and they keep evolving and improving, and they become the educators actually in their communities and through their guests.
Thank you. That's so nice. And I do think it's so funny because this movement and this coalition between like TTC and B Corps and other, there are other, as we work with like either movements or certification processes and what is responsible, regenerative, sustainable, whatever you want to call it, tourism that's just more than just the thing that it is, right? But I do think I just want to point back to this over and over again, this recognition that as tour operators or tourism purveyors, we have a unique opportunity. We get people at their best. We get them when they're not working, they're not busy, they're not distracted, their minds are open. What an opportunity. I mean, what an opportunity to inception, some ideas of being a positive change, of empowerment for consumers, dollar voting. And so I think that, yeah, as opposed to maybe just like a certified B Corp coffee company, we have such a long amount of time with people, and like thinking about the pre and post trip experience as well. As we know, excitement, starts when the booking process starts. It probably peaks during the actual experience itself, but it also doesn't just drop off. So we have such a large time frame, and it can be so so extensive if we sort of see that as, we're not just doing a transaction between money and a service. Oh, hope you have a great time, enjoy, leave us a TripAdvisor review. No, like we can consider ourselves educators, and that changes things so much, and it makes it like, yeah, talking about rewarding work. I think that as we become more connected to our visitors and our community and so on, the work itself becomes a lot more meaningful, and we have more investment ourselves in all of these different stakes. So it's one of those things that's just win-win-win. There's really no, it's definitely hard work, like it's never ending, but other than that, we like hard work, and it is so rewarding to be a part of all of this.
Yeah, maybe to add on to what Adrianne was saying about how we're getting people at their best and how they can really transform through their travel experience. What we find unique, like the video that you all may have seen at the beginning of this, that plays in every one of our hotel rooms. And we do that on purpose. We want guests to check in, and they want to not only know what our values are, but that a company can do those things and still thrive and be successful, because there is a perception among some that all this is just do-gooding. And that's awesome. You know, it's good to have good people out there, but like the world at large can't do this. There may be a perception on that. And that's just false. I mean, people don't know that, but the more you look within this community and you realize, okay, so they're doing all this hard work, but they're actually successful too. And wait a second, I know a bunch of those brand names. And you start to realize that business can in fact be conducted this way. And so what I love about the community is I look at every B Corp as a leader within their industry and otherwise that can be pointed to say, you know, you're telling me that this can't be done, but here's living proof. They've been doing that for years. And you've heard their name because they're wildly successful. You know, and whether it's in travel, whether it's in apparel, whether it's in food and beverage, again, over 150 industries of these really successful businesses. And so we can transform capitalism. We can transform the business community. We can transform the world by having business done the right way and properly. So it's not just the travel industry. We need every business to operate like this. And in fact, it's in their best interest to do so. They just have to adopt maybe a longer term view thinking. And travelers and consumers who ultimately are paying all the money to keep businesses in business in the first place have huge power when it comes to where am I going to spend my money. You know, that's a whole, we call it the Vote Every Day campaign. Every time you spend $1, you're voting for the world that you want. And that is true. So that's not a pitch to come stay at my resort. Go stay with the others on on this call. Go stay with anyone in the B Corp community. Make sure you're spending your dollars in that right direction, because if you're not, you're likely going against what your values are. And that kills me every time I think of where I spend money in ways that work against what I do every day. So spend your money with B Corp, spend your money with transformational travel companies and any companies that are doing the right thing in the world right now.
Everyone likes things to be made easy for them, you know, and when someone's traveling, if they want to know, this basically means that the organizations, the companies, the destinations that are involved in the Transformational Travel Council and in B Tourism that are representing all stakeholders, we can make it easy. We can provide a choice architecture that allows the traveler to say like, oh, you know what? I want to make sure that I'm going to a resort, or I'm booking through a company, or I'm working with a consultant that is going to provide me with the right framework to actually walk me through it, to make it easy for me. Oh, I can go here. I can go to a B Corp. I can go to a TTC company. I can go to both, you know, or all part of it together. That's just making it easy. And I think there are a lot of companies who don't necessarily who are more profit driven, who can make things really easy. Why don't we aim for that as well? And that can make it easy for people to book their travel, to actually go to a place that does stand by their values. And speaking of booking travel, I'm curious to hear more from you guys at Elsewhere, Alexis and Craig, about how you, because you're not necessarily face to face with each customer, and getting them, like Adrianne said, when they're at their best and they're actually at their resort and the energy ends up being a little smoother. How do you interact with the customers that are going to come to Elsewhere to encourage them or to educate them on your values?
Totally. I think that's a good question. So we do so in a number of different ways, but ultimately what we really do as a platform is really try to give the focus and the onus on our local experts who we take so much time vetting. And like you said, these communities of B Corp and especially TTC, we've actually vetted a lot of our local operators through TTC, because in countries that we needed to be represented, we needed a place where we could say, okay, where's an aggregated group of people that we have trust in, that have already been pre-vetted, and then we can also do our vetting. And the TTC has brought us some really, really amazing people. So in terms of how we talk about it with our clients, I mean, we're constantly trying to educate. We're talking about how to educate our travelers in a number of different ways, but our website is obviously the first and foremost. And we really see that all over our website. So it's on our homepage, it's our about us, it's our commitments. And education on how to travel better is woven throughout all of that. And we have that throughout the customer journey as well. So even when you make a request on our site, we have a question that says, are you, the traveler, willing to make good choices while you're traveling on the ground? Are you dedicated to like making responsible decisions, choosing more ethical options? And we actually make travelers opt in our request form. And then when they get connected to the local agent, we have this customer area where we talk about what the local agents are doing, what we as Elsewhere are doing, why we've chosen these certain partners. And it's, I mean, aside from like them being able to do super amazing experiences and the fact that they're locals who know, you know, the destination better than anyone else, we highlight the fact that we've chosen them because they support certain charities, or they give back to their local community in a certain way, or they're part of a conservation that, you know, helps endangered rhinos or something like that. So we're constantly finding these opportunities to highlight the best of our local partners, but we really try to put our local partners at the forefront of all of that. And so we are pretty hands off, aside from our platform itself, aside from our website, the request form, and then their platform that they interact with, what we call the customer area. We're very hands off with our travelers, and we just really want them to speak with the local agent because those are the people who are interesting. And it's actually a conscious decision that Craig and I don't put ourselves up front to represent Elsewhere, because we want to put these super amazing people who are the ones creating the trips and building the trips and doing these amazing transformative experiences. And we're just taking care of the platform to facilitate and allow this to all to happen. So yeah, and in short, we do it in a number of different ways, but without actually directly contacting the traveler. So yeah, I don't know if Craig, you want to add on to any of that?
Oh man, you nailed it.
Could I maybe add on a comment, because I've got a long history in branding, and I think Jared referred to it earlier, that it's an overarching certification. It's not a product or a process certification. And in my mind, if you think of brands capture the ethos or the character of a business. And so choosing to certify as a B Corp is a choice to interweave your commitment to the certification and the movement into your own identity. You know, it's in the first sentence when you introduce yourself. It'll be that you're a B Corp, as you saw in Jared's video. And I think that is truly distinctive in the world of certifications and associations and so on, that don't necessarily define who you are in terms of your ethos, your character, your intent, like the B Corp certification does. And so I think it's a very important consideration if you're thinking about becoming a B Corp, is, are you willing to go to the next stage of not just measuring impact through the B impact assessment, but are you willing to go to the next stage of changing and reshaping or evolving your identity to be this kind of business? And we find obviously the strongest examples are where the leadership is mission aligned, values driven, and actually their businesses start to become an extension of themselves. And I suppose that asynchronicity or that alignment makes them all the more competitive, because the passion comes straight through. You know, it becomes a joy to work. So it is about identity. It's not just about a certification, and that's come through in so many conversations I've had, and almost everyone here, even Erin in the beginning. I saw it in a magazine and I was like, boom, there it is. That's what I want to be. I found it. You know, this is my identity. We're going this way, and we're not. You know, it's going to be tough potentially, but we're committed. And that's authentic, and I think that for me is really inspiring for all of us who consider ourselves as part of the global movement of leaders, is that it's actually also a global movement of people like ourselves that we can relate to.
I just wanted to add one small thing onto that, I mean, maybe sometimes we talk a lot about how awesome it is and how great it is and how valuable it is, and it is all of those things. But I think one of the main reasons that it might be, you just alluded to, Tom, and that's just that this isn't an easy path either. You know, it's this, constant striving for improvement in a world that is changing does often involve some soul searching and looking at yourself as a person or at your business and saying, I am not living up to my values in this regard, or we are not doing enough here. It takes an openness. It takes an ability to admit, maybe not wrongdoing, sometimes maybe wrongdoing, but just, I don't know, I feel like there's a word, and maybe one of you can help me fill that in, but it's just almost like this, like openness of admitting that I'm not the best and I'm not doing the most, and there might be someone else who is, and I want to learn from them, or I want to just take a moment and recognize that we have made a mistake, or we have not done enough, or whatever, I do recall at one, and it struck me at this moment that, like, at a certain point I went to a champions retreat, which are really sort of cool annual, normally in a normal year, reunions of B Corps from all over the world. And the leadership itself of B Corp on this particular year, kind of realizing that they probably couldn't authentically lead the organization that they wanted to have, with the leadership being and looking and having the background that it did, being largely at that point, like, to be upfront, white and male. So, and they were very open about that, and how for them, realizing that the best thing for them to do to make this organization, this movement, what they wanted it to be, was to actually kind of step back a little bit. It was really powerful, because it was this, the world is changing. We have to change with it. Like, this year has shown that more than ever, the problems that we have in large part are of our own doing. And, but we can also be the solutions. And how do we do that? Well, sometimes it's not the thing that you want to do. It's not maybe you leading anymore. Maybe it's letting someone else lead. So I would just say that I think that authentic leadership sometimes comes with uncomfortable, like, discomfort too, and to be open and understanding that that is a part of this process as well.
I'm so glad that it's just nice to hear that. And I feel like within this community, there's a lot of shared sentiment to what you just explained. And the way I think of it is still using that word evolution. I had a teacher when I was young, like in elementary school, that used to say to us, I remember actually saying one time to her, like, you were wrong. Like, you're a grown up, you should know. And she looked at me and said, I may be a grown up, but I may be a grown up, but I'm not all grown up. Like, we're all always growing up. Our companies are always growing up. And part of this, part of what we're tied to and what we're committed to by being a B Corp is that accountability, that even if we mess up, we can be accountable for it. And it's so easy these days to fall into this quick, I need to be satisfied right in that moment. That cancel culture of that can be tough too. Like, if one company or person at a company makes a mistake, we cancel them or cancel their whole company. And what I really appreciate sometimes about companies, and I try to do the same exact thing, our everyone at Wanderwell tries to do the same thing, is, yeah, we mess up once in a while, and we're going to be accountable for it. We're going to say, I'm sorry, we have something to learn here. Let's learn, let's improve. And we all deserve that. It's everyone, our customers deserve it. Every stakeholder in our businesses and in this community deserves to kind of like take a deep breath, let it out. Okay, let's move on to the next thing and grow from this experience.
Yeah, and just as a pending B Corp, just to tag on to what you said, Erin, it's been so refreshing for us coming into this space and having this environment of constant discussion and non-judgmental discussion, because it is intimidating, the B Corp process. And instead of, us being overwhelmed and not sure where to participate, we feel super welcomed by all these other companies and by all of you guys, who have served as our guiding light and how to set up our company or set our infrastructure or whatever. And I think that's like one of the best things about this community, is that we can talk to you guys without judgment and learn together. And the community itself is constantly reevaluating how they, every aspect of the process. And that's why the B impact assessment is always changing. And that's a beautiful thing. So, yeah.
I had one fun experience to what Alexis is saying. Anyone in any industry that's gone to a conference before knows it can be incredibly uncomfortable to bump into people and feel like you're going to be sold all the time. Like, you go to general conferences and you're like, I don't want to see them, or I'm gonna hide over here, or whatever else. It's a totally different experience when you're at a B Corp conference. You're like, you want to learn from people. You want to you want to soak up the energy that they're carrying into that room. It's like you just want to be there and you don't want to leave. And it's just totally different. So like if you want to be in a world where you actually like enjoy the atmosphere and the people you're with and that you're talking to, again, this is the only place to be. Everywhere else, it's it's a flip of the coin at best on if you're going to like that call or like that person or whatever else. This is kind of like maybe not a guarantee, but a very high probability you're going to be happy.
I feel that way being at a B Corp, B Corp convention or gathering, the Transformational Travel Council gathering, 1% for the planet. There's just a lot of synergy between all these, and we end up seeing a lot of the same people in them, and they're growing, constantly growing. Listen, we have about 10 minutes left, and I know we could talk a lot. Adrianne, like you said, we could probably have a 24-hour event just on this. And but I want to get to, there are actually a couple questions that came across for Q&A. And the first one actually it stretches across the entire business world, but in business world and B Corp. And it is mainly about accountability in the hierarchy or governance of our companies. How do we be transparent? How do we, first of all, as B Corps, I guess, organize that hierarchy of our company within governance? What is the important in governance within a B Corp? And also be transparent about that and be accountable for that. I can think of a few things, like in maybe expressing the ratio for the pay between the highest paid employee and the lowest paid employee. Anyone want to chime in on that? By the way, this is Nishant, who is part of the TTC and part of this planning committee for the event, who asked this question. Thank you, Nishant.
I'll have a stab at it, as I do have to sort of present this every now and then. So I think there's actually a couple of levels of governance, and it actually starts with legal commitment. So when you become a B Corp, you actually have to change your, in South Africa, it's a memorandum of incorporation to actually specify your service to stakeholders and not just shareholders. So that's the first thing. The other component is, as is the case in most states in America, and I think 6 other countries now, there is benefit corporation legislation, legal legislation that you can adopt. And certainly by becoming a B Corp, you are on a pathway to adopting that legislation. So that actually generates a mission lock. Legally, the business is obligated to serve stakeholders. So that's, before you even talk about what the directors are doing, like the legal obligation of the business becomes set in this positive direction. And then looking at other aspects of governance, you got to look at, naturally, the mandates of the directors, looking down at kind of what sort of disclosures you make, your reporting, transparency. So it's actually each one of the 5 pillars of the B impact assessment are super rigorous. And the bigger company you are, it kind of tends to unfold more questions. The more complex your operation, it wants to get to the root of authentically assessing the business. So as the team said, it is evolving, and at the same time, it sort of scales to the scale of your business. If you're a 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 employee business, you're not going to have as many questions to answer as a multi-billion-dollar business. And that pertains to governance like it does to any of the other components of the assessment.
Maybe one last thing to add. So as a private company, we don't have a lot of disclosure requirements, but as a benefit corporation, we have to do an annual benefit report. And in there, that's where our transparency comes out. That's where you can see things that otherwise you'd never have any idea. So we report on the different stakeholders in that, and we continue to take the impact assessment every year. Even though we recertify every 3, we use that to keep ourselves honest to ensure we're moving in the right direction.
Awesome. And there's a way more to expand on that too. I want to make sure that right before, actually, Jared, if you could say right now, if you're interested in learning more about becoming a B Corp, there are many ways to do it. One is you can actually just contact Tom and a number of other B Corp consultants that are part of the this movement. You can contact any one of us. We're happy to talk with you and guide you in the right direction. Jared, there's also the B Tourism and the Florida for Good website. So you can go to floridaforgood.com/B-tourism, and you can even write us a message there. I just want to get that in before we get to one more question that just came through. And actually, this question is directed at Adrianne, so about Bodhi. Do you work with, this is from Margaret Huff, do you work to engage people with the idea of intentionality at the time of the guest booking? I know we alluded to this a little bit, but can you expand a little more on the communication? It's interesting, yeah, you talk about you capture people at that spot. You not only capture people when they're maybe a little more open and reflective, but you provide a vehicle, many vehicles at your resort to put people even deeper into that state with yoga and surf, and I'm sure, and food and way more. Can you talk a little bit more about how you guys get that message across at that time?
Yeah, and actually I think we've improved greatly in this specific regard. We definitely first focused on the experience itself as we developed, and then we started, I would say our phase 2 was the post-trip experience. So like everything you learned here, let's synthesize that. Let's basically we have what's called the Ocean Guardian program, which is essentially like, how did you feel when you were in the ocean? Does that make you, want to do anything differently in your life? This idea of people protect what they love. You fall in love with the ocean, you fall in love with nature, you go home and you maybe stop using plastics, single-use plastics or something along those lines. And I think that for us, we saw ourselves as just this ability to, I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience where someone tells you something and you're like, wow, that is incredibly obvious. And I feel like I should have been thinking about that. We saw ourselves in that unique ability to just make one little link and people would be like, yes, that makes so much more sense. Working with the TTC, I would say that we've expanded this idea to the pre-trip and really like the studies and the anecdotal experience, cohesion that the TTC has about the pre-trip experience. And I would say that's kind of what we're working on more now. We have, I would say some like pre-trip emails just talking about basically like, yeah, this is the community you're coming to. This is the country you're coming to. A little bit about that, a little bit about the community within, what to expect, but also kind of like we've partnered with a lot of other B Corp companies, like our sponsor here, Clean Canteen, just having, like you want to come to Costa Rica, country that has approximately 20% of its land protected and is known, globally as being a pretty powerhouse in terms of environment. Like, here's how you can kind of like work with that, I think people appreciate that because it's like, at a certain point, like there's so much information to know about in the world and people do live busy lives. And so to have, an organization that you're going to visit provide little bits of information. It's like some of these things are not major things that one has to do. They're like a little thread that pulls everything together in a way, So we're trying to identify, I would say, and it's a constant work in progress, ways to make the most of this experience, and I would say our work with the TTC is we're definitely being informed and educated. Sometimes it's even more of a spirit. It's not necessarily like buy this, do this. It's like more of like a set your intention or just feeling like, what do you want to get out of this week, And we are toying with the idea always of making it a little bit more of a complete experience with like pre, during, and post intentionality and like workshops and stuff like that. I think we're always a little bit intimidated because we're just like surf inspectors and yogis, do we have the authority to do this, to be this role? But I would say also we had that same intimidation about B Corp movement. Like, are we good enough? Are we doing enough? Well, just try, trying, you learn as you go and you get better as you go. So that what I'd say is our mentality.
Awesome. I really can't wait till I can go with my family to be at your resort. I say it all the time, but it seriously is the number one place I want to go internationally next. So everyone, this has been awesome. Every time that we get to hang out with each other, which, by the way, for all you guys watching, we actually do hang out online in this environment pretty often, and hopefully you all can join us as members of the TTC, as future what we call Be Curious companies, as future B Corps, as pending B Corps, and advocates and supporters. Thank you to all of you for joining in on this. Thank you to the TTC for giving us this opportunity to talk about B Corps. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of us, reach out to the TTC, reach out to B Tourism, and we're happy to give more information and be advocates and guides. Thank you, and see you all soon, and enjoy the rest of the event.
Bye. Thank you,
Thank
Erin.
you.
Erin.
Fun.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Erin.
Erin.